Lieutenant Sarah Martinez adjusted her helmet one more time as she walked across the tarmac at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of jet fuel and the distant promise of snow. Around her, the other pilots from the 525th Fighter Squadron moved with the confident swagger that came with flying the world's most advanced stealth fighter. They joked loudly, their voices carrying across the concrete as they discussed weekend plans and compared mission statistics. Sarah walked in silence, her flight suit perfectly pressed, her equipment meticulously organized. She had learned long ago that drawing attention to herself in this environment rarely ended well. Better to blend into the background, to be competent but not threatening, skilled but not showy. It was a delicate balance she had mastered over 5 years of active duty. "Hey, Ghost," called Captain Rick Morrison, using the call sign that had stuck to her since flight school. He jogged up beside her, his own helmet tucked under his arm. "Heard you're taking the early patrol again today. You sure you don't want to trade with someone?" Jenkins was just saying he could use the extra flight hours. Sarah kept walking, her pace steady. She had heard variations of this conversation dozens of times. The suggestion was always wrapped in concern or helpfulness, but she understood what lay beneath it. The belief that she might not be able to handle the more demanding assignments. The assumption that she would prefer the easier routes. "I'm good, thanks," she replied, her voice even. "Early patrol suits me fine." Morrison fell into step beside her. "Look, Sarah, I'm not trying to be a pain here, but Command has been asking about pilot assignments for the joint exercises next month. The F-22s are going to be doing some pretty intensive air-to-air combat scenarios. I just want to make sure you're feeling confident about what exactly?" Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. Her brown eyes were calm, but there was steel underneath. "About flying the same aircraft you fly? About executing the same maneuvers you execute? About protecting the same airspace you protect?" Morrison held up his hands. "That's not what I meant, and you know it. It's just that this is going to be high-profile stuff. Foreign observers, media coverage, the works. Command wants their best pilots front and center." There it was. The assumption that had followed her throughout her career, spoken out loud with painful clarity. Sarah had graduated third in her flight school class. She had completed every training program with distinction. She had logged more than 800 hours in the F-22 Raptor without a single incident. But none of that seemed to matter when assignments were handed out or when the prestigious missions were discussed. "I'll fly whatever mission Command assigns me," Sarah said simply, then continued toward her aircraft. Her F-22, tail number 05-4107, sat waiting in its hangar like a sleeping predator. The Raptor was a marvel of engineering, capable of speeds exceeding Mach 2, equipped with some of the most advanced avionics and weapons systems ever created. Sarah ran her hand along the aircraft's smooth surface as she conducted her pre-flight inspection. This machine had become more than just her assigned aircraft over the past 18 months. It was the one place where her skills were measured purely by performance, where politics and assumptions couldn't follow her. The pre-flight checklist was something Sarah could perform in her sleep, but she never rushed through it. Each system check was thorough, each instrument reading carefully noted. Her crew chief, Technical Sergeant James Park, watched approvingly as she worked. "Everything looks perfect, Lieutenant," Park said as she completed the external inspection. "New engines are purring like kittens. Updated avionics package tested green across the board. This bird is ready to show off today." Sarah nodded her thanks. Park was one of the few people on base who treated her exactly the same as any other pilot. He cared about one thing: keeping his aircraft and its pilots safe. Sarah respected that clarity. As she climbed into the cockpit, Sarah felt the familiar sense of transformation that came with strapping into the F-22. On the ground, she was Lieutenant Martinez, the quiet pilot who flew her missions without fanfare. In the air, she became Ghost, a call sign that had started as a joke about how rarely anyone noticed her contributions, but had evolved into something more accurate. In the cockpit of her Raptor, she moved through the skies like a phantom, precise and deadly, and completely in her element. The morning briefing had been routine. Standard patrol pattern over the Alaskan coast, maintaining readiness posture, monitoring international airspace. Nothing challenging, nothing that would test her limits or showcase her capabilities. Just another milk run that would add flight hours to her logbook and keep her out of the way while more important missions were planned for other pilots. Sarah completed her system startup sequence with practiced efficiency. The F-22's twin Pratt and Whitney engines spooled up with their distinctive whine, the sound building to a controlled roar that vibrated through the aircraft's frame. She contacted ground control and received clearance for taxi. As she guided the Raptor out of its hangar and onto the taxiway, Sarah passed the other aircraft preparing for the morning's training exercises. She recognized the tail numbers of jets assigned to Morrison, Jenkins, and the other squadron pilots. Their missions today would involve complex aerial combat scenarios, formation flying with Allied aircraft, and weapons training exercises that would be filmed for recruitment videos and public relations campaigns. Her mission would be flying alone along a predetermined route, watching for weather patterns, and maintaining radio contact with base operations. Important work, she reminded herself, but not the kind that appeared in promotion packets or impressed visiting dignitaries. The tower cleared her for takeoff, and Sarah advanced the throttles. The F-22 accelerated down the runway with breathtaking power, the force pressing her back into her seat as the aircraft transitioned from ground-bound machine to airborne predator. At exactly the right moment, she pulled back gently on the stick, and the Raptor lifted off the runway with graceful authority. This was the moment Sarah lived for. The instant when gravity released its hold, and the aircraft became an extension of her will. In the air, she wasn't the overlooked lieutenant or the diversity hire or the pilot who flew the boring missions. She was a hunter in a three-dimensional world where skill and instinct were the only currencies that mattered. She banked left after takeoff, following her assigned route toward the coast. Below her, the rugged Alaskan landscape spread out in shades of green and brown, broken by rivers that gleamed like silver threads in the morning sun. The beauty of it never got old, even after hundreds of similar flights. As she settled into her patrol pattern, Sarah's radio crackled to life. "Ghost, this is Overlord. How are you reading this morning?" "Overlord, Ghost. Reading you 5 by 5. Beginning patrol route as assigned." "Copy, Ghost. Weather looks clear for the next several hours. Should be a quiet morning for you." A quiet morning. Sarah almost smiled at the phrase. Every morning was quiet for her, at least in terms of mission assignments. She had stopped expecting anything else years ago. Instead, she had focused on becoming the best pilot she could be within the constraints of the opportunities she was given. What the other pilots didn't know, what command had never bothered to discover, was that Sarah had spent countless hours studying every aspect of aerial combat that went beyond her basic training. She had read every after-action report she could access, analyzed video footage of air-to-air engagements, and memorized the technical capabilities of every aircraft currently in service with Allied and hostile forces. During her off-duty hours, while other pilots relaxed or socialized, Sarah spent time in the flight simulators, running scenario after scenario. She had programmed custom training exercises that pushed her beyond anything required for her current assignments. She had studied the tactical doctrines of potential enemy forces until she could predict their likely responses to various combat situations. None of this extra preparation appeared in her official training records. None of it contributed to her fitness reports or performance evaluations. It was simply something she did because the alternative was accepting that she would never be given the chance to prove what she was capable of. As she flew her assigned route, Sarah's radar system painted a picture of the airspace around her. Commercial aircraft followed their established flight paths far below. Military training exercises were taking place to the south, the participating aircraft appearing as friendly contacts on her scope. International boundaries were clearly marked, and protocols for responding to any violations were fresh in her mind. The patrol route took her along a corridor that paralleled the international boundary between American and Russian airspace. This area saw regular activity from Russian reconnaissance aircraft conducting their own patrols, and tensions had been higher than usual recently due to political developments that Sarah didn't pretend to fully understand. Her job was to maintain awareness of any activity in her assigned sector and report anything unusual to command. For the first 2 hours of her patrol, everything was routine. She maintained her assigned altitude and airspeed, checked in with Overlord at regular intervals, and observed the magnificent landscape passing below her. The F-22 performed flawlessly, responding to her inputs with the precision that made it the world's premier air superiority fighter. It was during her third radio check that Sarah first noticed something unusual on her radar display. A contact had appeared at the edge of her detection range, moving in a pattern that didn't match any known commercial or military flight path. The signature was faint, suggesting an aircraft designed to minimize its radar cross-section, but Sarah's training had taught her to pay attention to exactly these kinds of anomalies. She adjusted her own position slightly, using the F-22's advanced sensors to gather more information about the contact. The aircraft appeared to be maintaining a course that would bring it close to, but not across, the international boundary. Standard operating procedure would be to report the contact to Overlord and continue her patrol while ground-based controllers determined if any response was necessary. But something about the contact's behavior pattern troubled Sarah. The aircraft was following a route that would allow it to observe American military installations without technically violating international law. It was a reconnaissance mission, carefully planned to gather intelligence while maintaining plausible deniability. As she watched, a second contact appeared on her scope, then a third. All three aircraft were maintaining formation at the edge of international airspace, their course designed to maximize their intelligence-gathering opportunity while minimizing their exposure to American response. Sarah contacted Overlord immediately. Overlord Ghost. I have multiple unidentified contacts bearing 035, range 60 miles, altitude approximately 30,000 feet. Request instructions. The response took longer than usual. Ghost, Overlord. We're tracking those contacts. Maintain your current patrol pattern and continue monitoring. Sarah frowned as she processed this response. Command was aware of the contacts, but wasn't taking any immediate action. That suggested they were either not considered a significant threat or there were political considerations that prevented a more aggressive response. She continued to track the unknown aircraft, noting their course and speed. They were getting closer to American airspace, and their formation was becoming more spread out, which would complicate any attempt to monitor or intercept them if the situation escalated. Overlord Ghost. The contacts are now bearing 042, range 45 miles. They appear to be conducting a coordinated reconnaissance mission along our border. Are there any Allied aircraft in this area that might account for these signatures? Negative, Ghost. No Allied aircraft are scheduled in that sector. Continue monitoring and report any change in their course or altitude. Sarah felt a familiar frustration building. She was being asked to watch a potential intelligence-gathering operation unfold without being given the tools or authority to do anything about it. The aircraft she was tracking were almost certainly foreign military reconnaissance planes, probably Russian Tu-95s or a similar long-range platform, conducting a mission designed to test American response times and gather information about defensive capabilities. What made the situation more concerning was the coordination between the three aircraft. They were maintaining a formation that would allow them to cover a wide area while providing mutual support if they encountered any American response. It was a professional operation, executed by experienced crews who understood exactly how to exploit the gaps in international law to achieve their objectives. As Sarah continued to track the contacts, she realized that their current course would take them past several sensitive military installations. The timing of their mission suggested advanced planning and detailed intelligence about American patrol patterns and response procedures. Someone had invested significant resources in planning this operation, and they clearly expected to complete it without interference. The thought that these aircraft might succeed in their mission while she watched helplessly was more than Sarah could accept. She had spent years preparing for situations exactly like this one, scenarios where quick thinking and superior piloting skills could make the difference between success and failure. But her current orders restricted her to observation only, turning her into a spectator in a situation where she could be making a real difference. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She adjusted her course slightly, not enough to violate her patrol pattern, but sufficient to put her in a better position to respond if the situation escalated. She also began reviewing the tactical options available to her if command decided to authorize a more active response to the reconnaissance mission. The F-22 Raptor was specifically designed for situations like this. Its stealth characteristics would allow her to approach the unidentified aircraft without being detected. Its advanced radar and weapons systems would give her a decisive advantage in any confrontation. Most importantly, her training and preparation had equipped her with the knowledge and skills necessary to execute complex aerial maneuvers in hostile conditions. What Sarah didn't know was that miles away, in the operations center at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, senior officers were watching the same radar contacts she was tracking and making calculations about response options. The unidentified aircraft represented a challenge that would require their best pilot and their most capable aircraft. In just a few minutes, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez would receive a call that would transform her from an overlooked patrol pilot into the tip of the spear in a high-stakes international incident. The skills she had developed in obscurity, the experience she had gained on countless routine missions, and the preparation she had undertaken on her own time were about to be put to the ultimate test. The quiet morning was about to become anything but routine, and the pilot everyone called Ghost was about to discover that sometimes being invisible is the most powerful advantage of all. The radio crackle that broke through Sarah's concentration carried a different tone than the routine communications she had been exchanging with Overlord. This was the voice of Colonel James Harrison, the squadron commander, and he was speaking with the clipped urgency that meant something significant was happening. Ghost, Overlord Actual. I need you to alter your current heading to intercept the contacts you've been tracking. New course bearing 045. Maintain current altitude. How copy? Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she processed the instruction. This wasn't a request to continue monitoring or to provide additional information about the unidentified aircraft. This was an intercept order, the kind of mission she had trained for but had never been assigned in actual operations. Overlord Actual, Ghost. Copy intercept order, altering course to bearing 045, maintaining altitude. Request clarification on rules of engagement. There was a pause before Harrison responded, and Sarah could picture the colonel consulting with his staff and probably higher-level commanders before answering. The political implications of intercepting foreign aircraft near international boundaries were complex, and every decision had to be carefully considered. Ghost, maintain visual identification protocols. You are cleared to approach and establish radio contact with the unidentified aircraft. Do not, repeat, do not take any aggressive action unless specifically authorized. Your mission is to identify the aircraft and determine their intentions. Understood, Overlord Actual. Proceeding to intercept for visual identification. Ghost out. Sarah banked the F-22 toward the new heading, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with transitioning from routine patrol to active mission. This was what she had prepared for during countless hours in simulators and training exercises. This was the moment when all her study and preparation would be put to practical use. As she approached the intercept course, Sarah activated the F-22's advanced sensor suite to gather as much information as possible about the unidentified aircraft. The contacts were now showing more clearly on her radar, and she could see that they were indeed maintaining a formation designed for mutual support while conducting reconnaissance activities. The lead aircraft was approximately 12 miles ahead of the other two, following a course that would take it along the Alaskan coast at a distance calculated to maximize intelligence gathering while remaining in international airspace. The trailing aircraft were positioned to observe different sectors, creating a surveillance pattern that covered a wide area of American military installations. Sarah adjusted her approach angle to take advantage of the F-22's stealth characteristics. One of the advantages of flying the world's most advanced stealth fighter was the ability to observe potential threats without being detected. The unidentified aircraft would not know she was approaching until she chose to reveal her presence. As she closed the distance, Sarah's training took over. She had memorized the visual identification characteristics of dozens of foreign military aircraft, and she began searching for the distinctive features that would allow her to determine exactly what she was dealing with. The size and configuration of the contacts suggested large, multi-engine aircraft, probably designed for long-range reconnaissance missions. At 8 miles distance, Sarah was able to make positive visual identification of the lead aircraft. It was a Russian Tu-95 Bear, a massive turboprop bomber that had been modified for reconnaissance and intelligence-gathering missions. The distinctive swept wings and for turboprop engines made it unmistakable, even from several miles away. Overlord Actual, Ghost. I have visual confirmation of lead contact. Russian Tu-95 Bear, conducting reconnaissance pattern along international boundary. Aircraft appears to be equipped with external sensor packages consistent with intelligence-gathering mission. Copy Ghost. Can you identify the trailing aircraft? Sarah adjusted her position to get a better view of the other two contacts. They were maintaining formation approximately 5 miles behind the lead Tu-95, their position calculated to provide overlapping coverage of the surveillance target area. Overlord Actual, Ghost. Trailing contacts are also Tu-95s, same configuration as lead aircraft. All 3 aircraft appear to be part of coordinated reconnaissance mission. They are maintaining course parallel to international boundary, estimated time to closest approach to sensitive installations 15 minutes. The response from Colonel Harrison carried a new level of urgency. Ghost, I need you to establish radio contact with the lead aircraft and determine their intentions. Use standard intercept protocols, but be prepared for evasive action if the situation escalates. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility as she processed these instructions. This was the first time she had been assigned a mission that required direct contact with potentially hostile aircraft. Everything she did in the next few minutes would be scrutinized by her superiors and could have significant diplomatic implications. She positioned the F-22 approximately 2 miles behind and slightly above the lead Tu-95, close enough to establish radio contact, but far enough away to maintain tactical advantage if the situation deteriorated. The Russian aircraft was enormous compared to her fighter, its wingspan nearly twice the length of her entire aircraft. Russian aircraft bearing 048. This is United States Air Force. You are approaching United States territorial airspace. Please state your intentions and identify yourself. The response came back in heavily accented English, delivered with the professional tone that suggested the Russian crew had been expecting this contact. United States aircraft, this is Russian Federation reconnaissance flight conducting routine patrol in international airspace. We are not violating any territorial boundaries. Sarah maintained her position relative to the Tu-95 while reporting back to command. Overlord Actual, Ghost. Russian aircraft claims to be conducting routine patrol in international airspace. Crew is responding to radio contact in English. Copy, Ghost. Monitor their course and be prepared to escort them away from sensitive areas if they alter their current track. What happened next would later be analyzed by intelligence specialists and tactical experts. But, in the moment, Sarah had to rely on her training and instincts to interpret the sudden change in the Russian formation. The two trailing Tu-95s began to diverge from their previous course, one turning north and the other south, creating a much wider surveillance pattern. At the same time, the lead aircraft began a gradual descent that would take it closer to the international boundary and provide better resolution for any reconnaissance equipment it was carrying. The maneuver was subtle but clearly deliberate, designed to test American response capabilities while maintaining the appearance of normal patrol activities. Overlord Actual, Ghost. Russian formation is altering course and altitude. Lead aircraft descending to 25,000 feet, trailing aircraft spreading formation to cover wider area. This is consistent with intelligence gathering mission rather than routine patrol. Colonel Harrison's response carried the weight of decisions being made at levels far above Sarah's rank. Ghost, you are authorized to close distance and make your presence clearly known to the Russian aircraft. Do not allow them to complete their current maneuver without understanding that they are under observation by United States forces. This was the moment Sarah had unknowingly prepared for throughout her career. All the routine patrols, all the training exercises she had watched from the sidelines, all the extra study she had done on her own time had led to this situation where her skills and judgment would make a real difference. She advanced the throttles and closed the distance to the lead Tu-95, positioning the F-22 where it would be clearly visible to the Russian crew. The Raptor's distinctive angular design and stealth characteristics would leave no doubt about the level of technology and capability being brought to bear on this situation. Russian aircraft, this is United States Air Force F-22. I am now escorting your formation. Any deviation from international airspace or aggressive action will result in immediate response. Maintain your current heading and altitude. The Russian pilot's response was more formal than his previous communication, suggesting that the appearance of an F-22 had elevated the significance of the encounter in his own mind. United States F-22, we understand your position. We are conducting routine patrol in accordance with international aviation agreements. But, even as the Russian pilot delivered this diplomatic response, Sarah observed the Tu-95 continuing its gradual descent and slight course correction toward American territorial boundaries. The aircraft was still technically in international airspace, but its actions clearly indicated an intention to gather intelligence about American military capabilities and installations. Sarah made a decision that demonstrated the tactical thinking that had never been put to use in her previous assignments. Instead of simply maintaining her escort position, she maneuvered the F-22 to a point directly ahead of the Tu-95's flight path, close enough to be unmistakable but far enough away to avoid any possibility of collision. The message was clear and required no radio communication to understand. The Russian aircraft could continue its current course only by demonstrating aggressive intent toward a United States military aircraft. Any attempt to maintain the reconnaissance mission would require actions that could be interpreted as hostile. Overlord Actual, Ghost. I have positioned myself to block further approach by lead Russian aircraft. Other Tu-95s have halted their course changes and are maintaining distance from territorial boundaries. Awaiting instructions. The silence on the radio lasted longer than Sarah expected, and she could imagine the discussions taking place in the operations center. Her tactical decision had been effective but unauthorized, and she wasn't sure how her superiors would respond to her initiative. Colonel Harrison's voice, when it finally came through her headset, carried a tone she had never heard from him before. Ghost, Overlord Actual. Your positioning is approved. Maintain intercept posture until Russian aircraft reverse course or clarify their intentions. The next few minutes tested Sarah's flying skills in ways that no training exercise had ever approached. The Tu-95 pilot, clearly frustrated by the effective intercept, began a series of course corrections and altitude changes designed to work around the F-22's blocking position. Each time the Russian aircraft maneuvered, Sarah anticipated the movement and adjusted her own position to maintain the intercept. It was a three-dimensional chess match played at hundreds of miles per hour, with international political implications riding on every decision. Sarah found herself drawing on knowledge and instincts she hadn't realized she possessed, responding to the Russian pilot's tactics with counters that demonstrated a level of aerial combat awareness that surprised even her. The breakthrough came when the lead Tu-95 pilot attempted a more aggressive maneuver, diving below Sarah's position while turning toward American airspace. The move was clearly intended to test whether the F-22 pilot would take equally aggressive action to maintain the intercept. Sarah's response was immediate and decisive. She rolled the Raptor inverted and pulled through a high G turn that brought her beneath and ahead of the Tu-95 in a matter of seconds. The maneuver demonstrated not only the F-22's superior performance capabilities, but also the pilot's willingness and ability to match any escalation the Russian crew might attempt. Russian aircraft, you are now on a direct heading toward United States territorial airspace. Reverse course immediately or face consequences. The change in the Russian pilot's voice suggested that Sarah's demonstration of capability had achieved its intended effect. United States F-22, we are reversing course to comply with international boundaries. No aggressive intent. As Sarah watched, all three Tu-95s began turning away from American airspace, their reconnaissance mission effectively terminated by her intercept actions. The formation that had been carefully planned to gather intelligence about American defensive capabilities was now withdrawing without having achieved its objectives. Overlord Actual, Ghost. Russian formation is reversing course and departing the area. Mission appears to be terminated. Colonel Harrison's response carried unmistakable satisfaction. Outstanding work, Ghost. Return to base when Russian aircraft have cleared the area. We'll debrief when you land. As Sarah escorted the Tu-95s away from American airspace, she realized that something fundamental had changed in her career. She had been given an opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that had never been recognized or utilized, and she had performed beyond anyone's expectations, including her own. The flight back to base gave her time to process what had happened. She had successfully intercepted and turned away a foreign reconnaissance mission using tactics and skills that she had developed through personal study and preparation. More importantly, she had done so without creating an international incident or escalating the situation beyond diplomatic management. When she landed at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, Sarah noticed that more people than usual were present on the flight line. Word of the intercept mission had clearly spread through the squadron, and her fellow pilots were watching with expressions that ranged from surprise to respect to something that looked like reevaluation. As she shut down the F-22's engines and completed her post-flight procedures, Sarah reflected on how different this day had been from the routine patrol she had expected to fly. She had finally been given the chance to prove what she was capable of, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. But as she climbed down from the cockpit and saw Colonel Harrison approaching with several other senior officers, Sarah realized that her real test was just beginning. The successful intercept had demonstrated her capabilities, but it had also raised questions about why those capabilities had never been utilized before and what other missions she might be qualified to undertake. The debriefing that followed would reveal just how significantly her career was about to change, and how the pilot everyone called Ghost was about to become one of the most important assets in the United States Air Force's operational arsenal. The debriefing room at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson had never felt so crowded to Sarah. Colonel Harrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by Major General Patricia Watts, the wing commander, and several other officers she didn't immediately recognize. The presence of so much senior leadership for what should have been a routine mission debrief told Sarah that her morning intercept had generated more attention than she had initially realized. Lieutenant Martinez, Colonel Harrison began, consulting the tablet in front of him. Let's start with your tactical decision to position yourself ahead of the lead Russian aircraft. That maneuver wasn't covered in your mission briefing. Can you walk us through your reasoning? Sarah had spent the flight back to base thinking about this exact question. Her decision had been instinctive, based on her analysis of the Russian pilot's intentions and her assessment of the most effective way to terminate the reconnaissance mission without escalating to a dangerous confrontation. Sir, the Tu-95 was clearly conducting intelligence-gathering activities under the cover of international patrol rights. Based on their formation and course changes, they were attempting to maximize their surveillance of our installations while maintaining plausible deniability. Standard escort protocols would have allowed them to continue their mission. General Watts leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. So you decided to take more aggressive action than your orders specified? I decided to use the tactical advantages available to me to achieve the mission objective, Sarah replied carefully. The F-22's capabilities allowed me to position myself in a way that made it impossible for the Russian aircraft to continue their intelligence gathering without demonstrating clear hostile intent. One of the officers Sarah didn't recognize, a lieutenant colonel with intelligence insignia on his uniform, consulted his own notes before speaking. Lieutenant, your intercept prevented what our analysis suggests would have been a comprehensive reconnaissance of several sensitive installations. The Russian formation was following a flight path that would have given them visual and electronic intelligence about our defensive capabilities, response times, and operational procedures. Sarah nodded. Yes, sir. That was my assessment of their intentions. Based on what training or experience? The intelligence officer asked. This was the question Sarah had been dreading. Her analysis of the Russian mission had been based on knowledge and preparation that went far beyond her official training requirements. She had spent hundreds of hours studying foreign reconnaissance tactics, learning about the capabilities and limitations of various aircraft types, and analyzing the strategic objectives that drove intelligence-gathering missions. I've made it a point to study potential threat aircraft and their typical mission profiles, sir. During my off-duty time, I've reviewed after-action reports from previous intercept missions and analyzed the tactical patterns used by foreign reconnaissance aircraft in similar situations. General Watts exchanged glances with Colonel Harrison before responding. Lieutenant, we've been reviewing your training records and performance evaluations. Your technical flying skills are consistently rated as exceptional, but there's very little documentation of the kind of tactical knowledge you demonstrated today. Where exactly did you acquire this expertise? Sarah felt a moment of uncertainty about how much to reveal about her self-directed preparation. I've used the flight simulators to run scenarios that go beyond the standard training requirements. I've also studied publicly available information about foreign military capabilities and tactics. I felt it was important to understand the broader strategic context of our mission responsibilities. The intelligence officer looked up from his tablet with obvious surprise. You've been conducting your own tactical analysis and scenario training without official authorization or supervision. Yes, sir. I wanted to be prepared for situations that might go beyond routine patrol missions. Colonel Harrison set down his stylus and looked directly at Sarah. Lieutenant, can you estimate how many hours you've spent on this additional preparation? Sarah had never calculated the total, but she knew it was substantial. Probably several hundred hours over the past 3 years, sir. Maybe more. The silence that followed her answer stretched uncomfortably long. Sarah couldn't tell if the senior officers were impressed or concerned about her unauthorized initiative in expanding her knowledge and capabilities beyond official requirements. General Watts broke the silence with a question that surprised Sarah. Lieutenant Martinez, in your assessment, how many pilots in this squadron would have been able to execute the intercept mission as effectively as you did today? Sarah considered the question carefully. She respected her fellow pilots and had no desire to diminish their capabilities, but she also understood that her self-directed preparation had given her knowledge and skills that weren't part of standard pilot development. I'm not sure, ma'am. The tactical situation required specific knowledge about foreign reconnaissance aircraft and their typical operational patterns. It also required familiarity with advanced intercept techniques that aren't covered in our standard training syllabus. That's a diplomatic way of saying not many, the intelligence officer observed dryly. General Watts stood and walked to the large display screen at the front of the room. With a few keystrokes, she brought up a map showing the morning's intercept mission, complete with flight tracks for both Sarah's F-22 and the 3 Russian Tu-95s. What this mission demonstrated, General Watts said, is that we have a pilot who has taken the initiative to develop capabilities that we didn't even know we needed until today. Lieutenant Martinez identified a foreign intelligence gathering operation, developed an effective tactical response, and executed that response without escalating to a dangerous confrontation. She turned back to face Sarah. What it also demonstrates is that we've been underutilizing one of our most capable pilots by assigning her to routine patrol missions that don't require or showcase her actual skill level. Sarah felt a surge of validation mixed with uncertainty about where this conversation was leading. She had never complained about her assignments or sought recognition for her additional preparation, but she couldn't deny that she had often felt frustrated by the limited opportunities to apply her capabilities. Colonel Harrison consulted another document before speaking. Lieutenant, we've been asked by Headquarters Air Force to identify pilots for a new program that's being developed in response to increased foreign reconnaissance and testing activities along our borders. The program requires pilots with advanced tactical knowledge and the ability to operate independently in complex situations. Based on your performance today, General Watts added, and on what we've learned about your self-directed preparation, we believe you would be an ideal candidate for this program. It would involve advanced training, access to classified intelligence briefings, and assignment to missions that are significantly more challenging than routine patrol duties. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she processed this information. After years of flying routine missions and watching other pilots receive the prestigious assignments, she was being offered an opportunity that seemed almost too good to believe. What would this program involve, ma'am? The intelligence officer answered. Specialized training in foreign military capabilities and tactics, advanced combat maneuvering courses, briefings on current intelligence regarding foreign military activities, and assignment to a rapid response team that would handle intercept missions, reconnaissance activities, and other time-sensitive operations. General Watts returned to her seat and looked directly at Sarah. This would also mean a significant increase in responsibility and visibility. The missions you would be assigned would have strategic implications, and your performance would be evaluated at levels far above the squadron command structure. Sarah understood the implication. Success in this program would accelerate her career beyond anything she had previously imagined. Failure would be equally visible and would likely end any hopes of advancement in military aviation. I'm interested in the opportunity, ma'am. When would the program begin? Next week, Colonel Harrison said. You would report to Nellis Air Force Base for 6 weeks of intensive training, followed by assignment to a joint task force that operates out of multiple locations depending on current threat assessments. The speed of the transition was almost overwhelming. 3 hours ago, Sarah had been flying a routine patrol mission. Now she was being offered a career opportunity that would fundamentally change her role in the Air Force. There is one other thing you should know, General Watts said. This program was created specifically in response to the kind of situation you handled today. Foreign military forces have been conducting increasingly sophisticated reconnaissance and testing missions along our borders, and our standard response procedures haven't been adequate to counter these activities. She paused before continuing. What you demonstrated today is exactly the kind of tactical thinking and piloting skill that this program was designed to develop and utilize. You've essentially proven that the concept works. The intelligence officer added, your success in turning away the Russian reconnaissance mission has already been reported to the Pentagon. There's significant interest at very high levels in understanding how you were able to achieve such effective results. Sarah realized that her life was about to change in ways she had never anticipated. The years of preparation and frustration, the routine missions, and overlooked capabilities had led to this moment when everything she had worked for was finally being recognized. If I accept this assignment, what happens to my current position in the squadron? Colonel Harrison smiled. Lieutenant, after today's performance, your current position is going to change regardless of whether you accept this program. Word of your intercept mission has already reached other commands, and there are several organizations that are going to want access to your capabilities. General Watts stood again, signaling that the debriefing was coming to an end. Lieutenant Martinez, you have 24 hours to make your decision about the advanced program. I should tell you that your squadron commander and I both strongly recommend that you accept this opportunity. As Sarah stood to leave, the intelligence officer handed her a folder marked with classification markings she had never seen before. This contains background information about the program and the types of missions you would be assigned. Review it carefully, and let us know if you have any questions. Sarah walked out of the debriefing room, carrying more than just the classified folder. She was carrying the weight of recognition she had waited years to receive, the responsibility of opportunities she had never imagined, and the uncertainty of a future that was suddenly full of possibilities. As she passed through the Squadron Operations Center, Sarah noticed that conversations stopped and heads turned to follow her progress. News of the morning's intercept mission had clearly spread throughout the base, and her fellow pilots were seeing her through completely different eyes. Captain Morrison approached her near the exit, his expression a mixture of respect and curiosity. Sarah, I heard about the Russian intercept. That was some impressive flying. Thank you, Sarah replied simply. Morrison looked like he wanted to say more, but Sarah continued walking toward the parking lot. She had a lot to think about, and she needed time to process the dramatic change in her circumstances. As she drove home to her small apartment off base, Sarah reflected on the irony of her situation. She had spent years preparing for opportunities that never seemed to come, developing skills that were never utilized, and proving herself in situations that nobody seemed to notice. Now, in the span of a single morning, all of that had changed. The invisible pilot had become visible in ways that would reshape her entire career. The question now was whether she was ready for the level of responsibility and challenge that came with finally being recognized for her true capabilities. The classified folder on her passenger seat represented a door to a future she had dreamed about but never expected to achieve. Tomorrow, she would have to decide whether to walk through that door and discover what lay beyond the routine missions and overlook potential that had defined her military career thus far. For the first time in years, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez felt like her future was entirely in her own hands. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly in all directions as Sarah's transport aircraft descended toward Nellis Air Force Base. 6 days had passed since the Russian intercept mission, and she had spent every one of them studying the classified materials in the folder General Watts had given her. What she had learned about the program she was joining had exceeded her most ambitious expectations. Project Raptor Shield, as it was officially designated, represented a fundamental shift in how the Air Force approached intercept and reconnaissance missions. Rather than relying on standard protocols and predetermined response procedures, the program was designed to train pilots who could analyze complex tactical situations in real time and develop innovative solutions to unprecedented challenges. The aircraft waiting for her at Nellis told the story of just how serious the Air Force was about this program. Instead of the standard F-22s she was familiar with, the flight line displayed newer variants equipped with advanced sensor packages and upgraded avionics systems. These were aircraft specifically modified for the kind of missions she would be training to execute. Colonel Michael Chun, the program director, met Sarah at the operations building with a welcome that was both professional and surprisingly personal. Lieutenant Martinez, welcome to Raptor Shield. I've read the after-action report from your intercept mission in Alaska, and I have to say it's exactly the kind of tactical thinking we're looking to develop in this program. Thank you, sir. I'm looking forward to the training. Chun led her through the operations building, which was unlike any military facility Sarah had previously experienced. Instead of the typical government office atmosphere, the building felt more like a high-tech research center, with large displays showing real-time global intelligence data and workstations equipped with simulation systems she didn't recognize. The first thing you need to understand about Raptor Shield, Chun explained as they walked, is that we're not trying to teach you to follow procedures. We're trying to teach you to write procedures in situations where none exist. He stopped in front of a display showing current foreign military aircraft positions around the world. Every day, we track hundreds of aircraft conducting missions that test our defensive capabilities, gather intelligence about our operations, or probe for weaknesses in our response protocols. Most of these activities fall into a gray area where standard military response options are either inadequate or politically inappropriate. Sarah studied the display, noting the concentration of activity along various international boundaries. So this program trains pilots to handle situations that don't fit into existing doctrine. Exactly. You'll be working with intelligence analysts, diplomatic specialists, and senior command staff to develop response options that achieve military objectives while avoiding unnecessary escalation or international incidents. Chen led her into a briefing room where 5 other pilots were waiting. Sarah immediately recognized the atmosphere of elite military units. These were operators who had been selected for capabilities beyond standard requirements, and they carried themselves with the confidence that came from knowing they were among the best at what they did. Lieutenants, meet your newest team member, Chen announced. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, call sign Ghost, just completed a successful intercept of Russian reconnaissance aircraft that prevented a significant intelligence gathering operation against our installations in Alaska. The introductions that followed revealed that each pilot in the program had been selected based on exceptional performance in unusual or challenging situations. Captain James Rodriguez had intercepted Chinese aircraft over the South China Sea using tactics that hadn't appeared in any training manual. Major Lisa Thompson had successfully escorted Iranian aircraft away from commercial shipping lanes without creating a diplomatic incident. Each member of the team had demonstrated the kind of independent tactical thinking that the program was designed to cultivate. The training that began that afternoon was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her military career. Instead of learning predetermined procedures for specific scenarios, she was presented with complex tactical situations and asked to develop her own solutions using available resources and intelligence. The first exercise involved analyzing the flight patterns of foreign reconnaissance aircraft and predicting their most likely objectives based on their course, altitude, and timing. Sarah found herself drawing on all the knowledge she had accumulated during her years of self-directed study, and she was gratified to discover that her preparation had given her insights that impressed even the experienced intelligence analysts on the training staff. Your assessment of the Russian Tu-95 mission profile is remarkably accurate, commented Dr. Angela Foster, the civilian intelligence specialist who was leading the exercise. You've identified objectives and vulnerabilities that our standard analysis techniques missed. The flight training component of the program pushed Sarah's piloting skills to new levels. The modified F-22s were equipped with sensor systems that provided unprecedented amounts of information about the tactical environment, but processing and acting on that information required mental agility and decision-making speed that went far beyond standard pilot training. During her 3rd training flight, Sarah found herself in a simulated engagement with multiple foreign aircraft conducting a coordinated intelligence-gathering mission. The scenario was based on actual incidents that had occurred along various international boundaries, and the objective was to terminate the reconnaissance mission without escalating to a shooting engagement. The solution required Sarah to coordinate with simulated Allied aircraft, manage complex political constraints, and execute precise flying maneuvers while processing real-time intelligence updates about enemy capabilities and intentions. It was the kind of multi-dimensional challenge that she had always hoped to encounter in her military career. Outstanding performance, her instructor, Major David Kim, told her after the simulation ended. You managed tactical, political, and technical challenges simultaneously while maintaining awareness of strategic implications. That's exactly the kind of integration we're looking for. As the weeks progressed, Sarah discovered that the program was teaching her to think about aerial combat and reconnaissance missions in ways she had never considered. Instead of focusing on the technical capabilities of aircraft and weapons systems, she was learning to understand the political and strategic context that shaped every mission. The intelligence briefings were particularly eye-opening. Sarah learned about the sophisticated techniques foreign militaries used to gather intelligence about American capabilities and operations. She discovered that many activities that appeared routine were actually carefully planned missions designed to test response times, analyze defensive capabilities, or probe for weaknesses in security procedures. The Russian aircraft you intercepted, Dr. Foster explained during one briefing, were conducting what we call a capability assessment mission. They were gathering information about how quickly we could respond to their presence, what types of aircraft we would deploy, and what tactical procedures our pilots would use. Sarah realized that her intercept mission had been even more significant than she had initially understood. By preventing the Russian aircraft from completing their intelligence gathering, she had protected information about American defensive capabilities that could have been used to plan more aggressive operations in the future. The most challenging aspect of the training involved learning to make tactical decisions under extreme time pressure while considering political and diplomatic implications. Sarah found herself in scenarios where the wrong response could trigger international incidents, but failure to respond could compromise national security. During one particularly complex exercise, she was required to intercept foreign aircraft that were conducting reconnaissance near American installations while a diplomatic summit was taking place. Any aggressive action could disrupt sensitive negotiations, but allowing the intelligence gathering to continue was also unacceptable. Sarah's solution involved using the F-22 stealth capabilities to approach the foreign aircraft without being detected, then revealing her presence at a moment that would force them to withdraw without creating a confrontational situation that could escalate diplomatically. Brilliant tactical thinking, Colonel Chin told her during the post-exercise debrief. You achieved the military objective while actually reducing diplomatic tensions rather than increasing them. As her training progressed, Sarah began to understand that she wasn't just learning to be a better pilot. She was learning to be a strategic asset who could operate effectively in the gray areas between diplomacy and military action where many of the most important missions took place. The other members of her team were equally impressed with her progress. Captain Rodriguez, who had initially been skeptical about adding another pilot to the group, began seeking her input on tactical problems that had challenged him during his own missions. You think about these situations differently than the rest of us, he told her after a particularly successful training exercise. You see connections and possibilities that aren't obvious to pilots who learned everything through official channels. Sarah realized that her years of independent study and preparation had given her a unique perspective on tactical problems. While her teammates were excellent pilots with solid training and standard procedures, her self-directed learning had exposed her to ideas and approaches that weren't part of conventional pilot development. During the final week of training, Sarah participated in a full-scale exercise that simulated a complex international incident involving multiple foreign aircraft, disputed territorial boundaries, and sensitive political considerations. Her role was to lead a multi-aircraft response that would protect American interests while avoiding escalation to a shooting conflict. The exercise required her to coordinate with intelligence analysts, diplomatic officials, and senior military commanders while simultaneously managing the tactical challenges of intercepting and deterring foreign aircraft. It was the kind of responsibility she had never imagined when she was flying routine patrol missions in Alaska. Her performance exceeded everyone's expectations. Sarah successfully managed all aspects of the complex scenario, achieving military objectives while actually improving diplomatic relationships with the countries involved. Her tactical decisions demonstrated both technical expertise and strategic thinking that impressed observers from the Pentagon who had come to evaluate the program. Lieutenant Martinez, Colonel Chin told her as the exercise concluded, "You've demonstrated exactly the kind of capability this program was designed to develop. You're ready for operational assignment." As Sarah prepared to leave Nellis Air Force Base for her first assignment with Raptor Shield, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since the morning she intercepted the Russian reconnaissance aircraft. She had gone from being an overlooked patrol pilot to being a member of an elite unit responsible for some of the most sensitive missions the Air Force conducted. The skills she had developed through years of independent preparation had finally found their proper application. The knowledge she had accumulated on her own time was now being recognized as exactly what the Air Force needed to address emerging threats and challenges. But as she reviewed the classified folder containing her first operational assignment, Sarah realized that her real test was just beginning. The training at Nellis had prepared her for the technical and tactical challenges she would face, but operational missions would involve real aircraft, real political implications, and real consequences for any mistakes. The quiet pilot who had learned to excel in obscurity was about to discover what it meant to operate at the highest levels of military aviation, where every decision could affect national security and international relations. The next phase of her journey would determine whether she could apply her hard-won expertise to the most challenging missions the Air Force could devise. 8 months after her graduation from the Raptor Shield program, Captain Sarah Martinez found herself standing in the Operations Center at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam, watching intelligence displays that showed a developing situation unlike anything she had encountered during her training. The promotion to captain had come with her assignment to the Pacific Theater, where tensions between the United States and various foreign powers created a complex operational environment that required exactly the kind of flexible thinking Raptor Shield had been designed to develop. The current crisis had been building for 72 hours. A joint military exercise between two allied nations had been disrupted by the unexpected appearance of foreign reconnaissance aircraft that were conducting coordinated intelligence-gathering operations across a wide area of the Pacific. What made the situation particularly challenging was that the foreign aircraft were operating from multiple directions simultaneously, creating a reconnaissance pattern that would be impossible to counter using standard intercept procedures. Captain Martinez called Colonel Lisa Park, the task force commander. We need your assessment of the tactical situation. Sarah approached the main display, which showed the positions and projected flight paths of more than a dozen foreign aircraft. The pattern was sophisticated and clearly represented months of planning and coordination. The aircraft were positioned to gather intelligence about American and Allied military capabilities while remaining in international airspace and maintaining the appearance of routine patrol activities. Ma'am, this is a comprehensive intelligence collection operation designed to exploit the gaps in our standard response capabilities, Sarah said, pointing to specific aircraft positions on the display. The foreign aircraft are coordinated to provide mutual support while covering overlapping surveillance sectors. If we respond to one group, the others will be able to complete their missions while our aircraft are occupied. Colonel Park nodded grimly. That's our assessment as well. Standard intercept procedures would allow them to achieve most of their intelligence-gathering objectives before we could respond effectively to all the groups simultaneously. Sarah studied the display more carefully, noting the timing and positioning of the various aircraft formations. The coordination suggests they have detailed intelligence about our response capabilities and procedures. They've planned this operation to exploit specific weaknesses in our standard protocols, which is exactly why we need a non-standard response, Park replied. We need a tactical solution that they haven't planned for and can't counter effectively. This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for since joining Raptor Shield. All her training, all her years of independent study, all her experience with complex tactical problems had led to this situation where innovative thinking could make the difference between mission success and strategic failure. I need access to all available intelligence about the foreign aircraft capabilities and a real-time assessment of current weather conditions across the operational area, Sarah said. Colonel Park gestured to the intelligence specialists working at nearby stations. Whatever you need, Captain. This situation has Pentagon attention at the highest levels. For the next 2 hours, Sarah immersed herself in analyzing every aspect of the developing situation. She studied the technical capabilities of the foreign aircraft, their likely surveillance objectives, and the political constraints that limited American response options. Most importantly, she began developing a tactical approach that would use the advanced capabilities of her F-22 and the unique training she had received to address all the foreign aircraft simultaneously. The solution that emerged was complex and risky, requiring precise timing and flawless execution, but it offered the possibility of terminating the entire intelligence-gathering operation without escalating to a dangerous confrontation. My recommendation, Sarah told the assembled command staff, is a coordinated deception operation that uses the F-22 stealth capabilities to create the impression of a much larger American response than we're actually deploying. She moved to the display and began outlining her tactical concept. Instead of trying to intercept each group of foreign aircraft individually, we use one aircraft, my F-22, to appear to be multiple aircraft operating in different locations simultaneously. General Robert Hayes, who had flown in from Pacific Command to oversee the response, looked skeptical. Captain, how do you propose to make one aircraft appear to be multiple aircraft? Sarah had anticipated this question. The F-22's stealth characteristics allow it to approach foreign aircraft without being detected until I choose to reveal my presence. By carefully managing my radar signature and using specific flight patterns, I can create the impression that multiple American aircraft are conducting intercepts across the entire operational area. She pointed to different positions on the display. I approach the first group of foreign aircraft, reveal my presence long enough to force them to respond, then use stealth to disappear and reappear near a different group. The foreign aircraft won't know if I'm the same plane or a different one, and their intelligence mission will be disrupted without requiring us to deploy multiple aircraft to cover all the intercept points. The silence that followed her briefing was longer than Sarah had expected. She knew the tactical concept was ambitious and would require piloting skills that pushed the F-22 to its operational limits, but She also knew it was the only approach that could address all aspects of the foreign intelligence operation simultaneously. Colonel Park was the first to speak. "Captain, this approach would require you to cover more than 1,000 miles of ocean while conducting multiple intercepts against aircraft that will become increasingly alert to your presence as the operation proceeds." "Yes, ma'am. But the F-22's performance capabilities and stealth characteristics make it possible, and the deception effect should prevent the foreign aircraft from developing effective countermeasures." General Hayes consulted his tablet before responding. "Captain Martinez, I've read your training reports and performance evaluations from Raptor Shield. Your instructors consistently noted your ability to develop innovative solutions to complex tactical problems. But this operation would be the most ambitious single-aircraft mission we've attempted." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility that came with proposing such an unconventional approach. "Sir, standard intercept procedures won't prevent the foreign aircraft from achieving their intelligence objectives. This approach offers the possibility of complete mission success while minimizing the risk of diplomatic escalation." The general studied the tactical display for several minutes before making his decision. "Captain, you're authorized to attempt this operation. But I want real-time communication throughout the mission, and if the situation becomes too dangerous or complex, you're ordered to withdraw immediately." "Understood, sir." The preparation for the mission took 4 hours and involved coordination with intelligence specialists, weather forecasters, and diplomatic officials who needed to understand the political implications of each phase of the operation. Sarah found herself at the center of a planning process that demonstrated just how far she had come from the routine patrol missions that had defined her early career. As she walked to her F-22, Sarah felt the familiar combination of excitement and responsibility that came with challenging missions. But this time, the stakes were higher than anything she had previously encountered. Success would demonstrate the effectiveness of innovative tactical thinking in addressing complex international challenges. Failure could compromise national security and potentially escalate diplomatic tensions with multiple foreign powers. The F-22 that had been prepared for her mission was equipped with the most advanced sensor and communication systems available. The aircraft represented the pinnacle of American aerospace technology, and Sarah knew that she would need every advantage it could provide to execute the complex mission she had designed. The first phase of the operation required her to approach the northernmost group of foreign aircraft without being detected, then reveal her presence in a way that would force them to respond while gathering information about their capabilities and intentions. The intelligence she collected during this phase would inform her approach to the remaining aircraft groups. As she flew toward the first intercept point, Sarah activated the F-22's advanced sensor suite and began analyzing the foreign aircraft she was approaching. The contacts appeared to be long-range reconnaissance planes, probably equipped with sophisticated intelligence-gathering equipment designed to collect information about American and Allied military capabilities. The intercept itself went exactly as Sarah had planned. She approached the foreign aircraft using the F-22's stealth characteristics, then revealed her presence at a moment that caught the reconnaissance planes completely by surprise. Their response confirmed her assessment of their mission and provided valuable intelligence about their communications procedures and tactical capabilities. But as she withdrew from the first intercept and began approaching the second group of aircraft, Sarah realized that the mission was becoming more complex than she had anticipated. The foreign aircraft were clearly communicating with each other and, with their command structure, sharing information about her intercept tactics and adjusting their own procedures in response. The second intercept required different tactics to account for the increased alertness of the foreign aircraft. Sarah used the F-22's superior performance to approach from an unexpected direction, creating the impression that a different American aircraft was conducting this intercept than had approached the first group. By the time she reached the third intercept point, Sarah was operating at the limits of both her own capabilities and those of her aircraft. The mission required constant tactical adjustments as the foreign aircraft adapted their procedures to counter her deception operation. Each intercept became more challenging as her opponents learned from their previous encounters. The breakthrough came during the fourth intercept, when Sarah realized that her deception operation was working even better than she had hoped. The foreign aircraft had become so focused on trying to counter her tactics that they had abandoned their intelligence-gathering objectives and were devoting all their resources to defensive maneuvering. "Overlord, Ghost," Sarah reported as she withdrew from the fourth intercept. "Foreign aircraft have ceased intelligence collection activities and are in full defensive posture. Mission objectives are being achieved. Copy Ghost. Your deception operation has exceeded all expectations. Foreign aircraft across the entire operational area are withdrawing from their surveillance positions. As Sarah completed the final phase of her mission and began the long flight back to base, she reflected on what she had accomplished. Using innovative tactics and the advanced capabilities of the F-22, she had single-handedly disrupted a comprehensive foreign intelligence operation that would have required multiple aircraft and standard procedures to address. More importantly, she had demonstrated that creative thinking and unconventional approaches could achieve strategic objectives that traditional military responses couldn't accomplish. The mission would be studied and analyzed for years to come as an example of how individual initiative and tactical innovation could address complex international challenges. When she landed at Pearl Harbor Hickam, Sarah was met by a reception committee that included General Hayes and several other senior officers she didn't recognize. The success of her mission had generated attention at the highest levels of military command, and she realized that her career was about to change once again. Captain Martinez, General Hayes said as she climbed down from her F-22, "What you accomplished today will be remembered as a watershed moment in military aviation. You've proven that innovative tactical thinking can achieve results that traditional approaches can't match." As Sarah walked through the post-mission debrief and began processing the implications of her successful operation, she realized that her journey from overlooked patrol pilot to strategic asset was complete. The skills she had developed in obscurity, the knowledge she had gained through independent study, and the experience she had accumulated through challenging training had combined to create capabilities that could address the most complex missions the Air Force could devise. The quiet pilot who had learned to excel without recognition had become a leader whose innovations would influence military tactics for years to come. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez had found her place at the center of American military aviation, where her unique combination of technical expertise and creative thinking made her one of the most valuable assets in the nation's defense arsenal. The girl who was never seen as an ace had finally proven that sometimes the greatest warriors are indeed the ones you never see coming, and that excellence developed in the shadows can ultimately shine brightest when the stakes are highest.